All right, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you can hear me okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. So a few things we wanted to cover today are some upcoming enhancements to the Process BI application. Also want to go through a couple of tips and tricks and review some options for expanding the use of Process BI or ClickSense um, beyond the Windshuttle platform. So we'll go ahead and get started here as I look at my agenda. So the first thing we're going to cover are a few of the updates that we're looking at for the June 12th release. So what we're seeing here today will be available starting June 12th. Right now, it'll just be email download available. So we will work together with our customers to get the upgraded or the updated version installed, and we'll go through some of the details on that later on. But what we see here is going to be some updates that are available in a couple weeks. With the install process, there'll be installation instructions and all that kind of stuff. So we'll touch base on that a little bit more coming up here. But I just wanted to walk through some of the things that we're doing that's a little bit new for us in this updated Process BI app. Okay, so not much change on the home screen, but a few things to point out here is that we are now using names. So once I get to the right screen here, we can see we're going to be using names of people. Previously, we were using usernames, so that's not very helpful if you have cryptic usernames or you're using single Windows tokens and you get I-pound and then the full username. It's not very helpful. So in this version, we're going to be moving towards actual names, so you're able to figure out who's doing what a little bit easier. So that's going to be handy. Again, all of this data, just as a refresher, if there's a few people on the line that don't have Process BI, what these visualizations are doing is it's looking at your Windshuttle Foundation data and basically providing visualizations on that information specifically. So Process BI is specifically designed to work with your Windshuttle Foundation data in an out-of-the-box fashion. So once you have this installed, there's not really anything you need to configure beyond that. It'll start reporting on all your process data. And as new processes come to life, maybe you went live with a couple new forms and workflows, they're automatically going to start showing up in the dashboards without having to do any additional configuration. So just want to remind people of that if you haven't seen the tool before, or maybe you'd forgot about that as an existing customer. So this is one little thing here. This is sort of a nice change if you're trying to hunt down people. So anywhere where we're using usernames before, we have now replaced that with the full name of that particular person. So we cleaned up a couple other items. There were a couple bugs we found in a couple of the charts. We cleaned those up. Nothing major, so it's not really changing the overall reporting, but we did find a couple issues here and there that we cleaned up along the way. One of the new visualizations that we were working on is looking at the number of times a process is touched. So we haven't settled on all the labels yet. So what we see here is a new graphic. This will be a new sheet that's going to be in the latest Process BI app. Right now, we're just calling it number of touches. Basically, what that means is the number of times a process was assigned to a particular user, a number of times a task was assigned within the process. So for example, if you have a new customer request and you have finance has to approve the credit limit and maybe the data management team looks for duplicates, all those are individual tasks. So all those are touch points within your process. So that's what we're trying to show here on the left is the number of times the process has been touched by a person. So that means if it was rejected back to the originator and the originator resubmits it, every time it gets passed between two people, it is then counted as a touch. Now, one thing to know about some of the updates, I said we were cleaning up some of the items. One thing we tried to be aware of is a team assignment. All right, so when you have a workflow task that gets assigned to a team of people, there's two ways that can be handled. If the team is everyone on the team needs to do their action, or if the first person in the team does the action, then it moves on from everyone else's task list. So in that second scenario, let's say you have 5 people in your in your group, and only one of them is going to act on it. Whoever picks it up first, they're the ones that do it. We're only tracking that task as a touch point. So we were getting some feedbacks like, well, it's hard, when I see something assigned to a team, it shows up 5 times, and it's sort of skewing my results because if I add 5 more people to that, I get different results. Or if I move it down to only 1 person in the group, my results change based upon that. So we're narrowing down where it makes sense to do so, to only track details around the person that actually did the work. So if you were just on the team but you weren't the one that did it, in many of these visualizations, it's no longer counting as a touch. So we're only counting and tracking the durations of the people that actually did the work, not the people that just happen to be on the team. This is useful for when you have maybe 2 people in a group. You have a primary person and one is the backup. We're only tracking that primary person that's doing the work. The data for the other person that's just there for a backup that didn't do the work, they're not showing up in the visualizations and in the metrics. So that's one of the bigger enhancements that we made to really track what the actual tasks that are being performed by the people that are doing them, not just because they're on a team. Okay, so about the number of touches, we're filtering here. You can see the average number of touches in the last 12 months. So these are only reporting on completed processes. So if the process is open, we won't see that number here. So we're only looking at processes that have gone from start to end, and then we're looking at the number of touches. So the data that we see here is just a clear process test bed. So we have a lot of half-baked data as we're doing development and testing. So this is not as maybe robust as the data within your environment as you're running real forms and workflows. Our environment is just testing. We have people that create little solutions to test little wind shuttle components. So we don't have a lot of touches here because people really aren't doing a lot of processing in our test environment. But you can now track the number of touches across the time periods. And again, just like any of the other visualizations, you're able to pick a particular process. So if I wanted to pick capital expense, I could filter on that, and I could see how I'm trending over the time. Okay, so I only have a couple months worth of data here from May and June, so not a great one, but you can see how items are trending for that particular process. So not only when I selected the process, I'll do that one more time. I'll clear that, and I'll make another selection here. So I'm going to pick capital expense, and after I accept that filter, you will see that the graphic drills down. This is the total number of touches in the last 12 months. So 385 tasks have been assigned to this process. To people over the last 12 months. So once I accept that, I'm able to see, now this is the individual process name. So this is request 105, 102, and I can see the number of times each individual form has been processed. So right now we have it sorted by highest first, but we could also sort it by process number or something like that, whichever we feel is the best based upon customer feedback. But right now we just have it sorted by the top number of touches first, and then you can filter down if you wanted to. You could also do some searching if you wanted to pick a particular process as well. Okay, so that's a little bit on the number of touches. So this does not this does include automated processes. So if you have workflow plugins doing actions, that is not considered a touch. So if you have a plugin that's interacting with SAP, maybe it's creating the customer, that is not considered a touch. We're only counting the number of times a person has acted on a task. That's the only time we consider a touch. Similarly, or I guess related, over on the right-hand side, we're looking at the number of processes that have not been touched by any person. So now we're looking at fully automated processes. So some customers have processes that pick up information from some system. Maybe it's an Excel file, maybe it's triggered by a SQL database, or something kicks off this process automatically, and it is able to go through the entire process, whatever its form and workflow, whatever its workflow is. It's able to do it all autonomously. It's checking SAP for something, checking another system for something, and moving along and making transactions along the way, sending emails, whatever it may be. But the process can complete from start to end and fulfill its value-added process without ever being assigned the person a task. So we want to be able to track those as well. So that's what this is talking about here. So this is the number of automated processes. This is 100% automated processes that have gone through the system. That means it's gone from start to end with at least one workflow action. So it's either been assigned to a person or a workflow plugin. So this is the number of processes that have only been acted upon by the workflow. They have not been touched by any person. So we have 619 total processes in our system. 86 of them were completed from start to end without ever being assigned to a person to do a review or add data or approval. So that represents 14% of the total processes have been completed without human intervention, other than maybe kicking off the request. So if the user kicks off the request, that does not count as a touch. So what we see here, if we wanted to pick a particular process, we can do so again. So I'm going to pick auto test because that's something I was working on today. So this is a process. We only have one time frame here because I just created this form and workflow today to test this graphic. So if I look at my workflow solution for this particular one, what we see is, I just created this simple item. If it goes to, if the field is not filled in, it goes to this delete attachment. So this is a workflow plugin. And otherwise, if that data is filled in, and it goes to an approval step. So if the workflow would go this path, it would at least get one touch, and it would show up as such in the Process BI dashboards. If the data was provided, it's going to go down here and do a plugin step. So this is not considered a touch. It would be considered one of the processes that would be fully automated should it go down this pathway here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna just do a quick example here, launching a process that goes through this route, and then we'll see how the metrics change for us in the Process BI app. So here we have, there are only 2 of those processes that were fully automated. We're going to go ahead and launch another process here. So I'm just going to launch my auto test. And as long as I fill in some data here, it'll go down that automated pathway. Okay, so that process should have finished already. Oh, and I see a task was assigned to me, so I did not even follow the workflow. So I'm going to do that again and not provide data this time, so we can see how the process would go automatically from beginning to end. All right, so now we have it's finished. Perfect. So we're going to go back. I'm going to go reload the data here. Now the data in your environment is automatically reloaded every hour. We have it scheduled for the most part to load data every hour, but because I want to do up to the minute here, I'm just going to manually reload that data so we can see how the process has been affected. All right, so it looks like we're good there. So let's go back to our dashboard. And we're going to take a look at that visualization again. Okay, we're going to pick on auto test, and hopefully this time, okay, we've gone from 86 up to 87 have been automatically processed, and now we have 3 of them that have been automatically processed as well. So you can see we are getting that fully automated. The number of processes is now 6. It was 4, but because I accidentally launched one and had it go down the wrong process, we can see that the number has changed here a little bit. So that's what this visualization is trying to show. Now, if you do have fully automated processes, how many of them have gone through without a human touching it? Maybe that process has error traps that if an error occurs, it gets assigned to a person and things like that. So you're able to track those separately. How many of them have gone through without touching, being assigned to a particular person? So these are a combination. This visualization is a combination of feedback from several customers about wanting to track how many times a process has been touched, and then also how many have not been touched at all. So fully automated processes. So that's one of the biggest updates to the visualizations of this particular version that will be released on the 12th. All right, so moving along to the next item here, we wanted to talk about some of the backend changes that we're making as well. So many of our customers are archiving their Windshuttle data. So after the data gets up to 5,000 records in your SharePoint list, SharePoint and Windshuttle start to have performance problems. So we like to keep the processes clean if possible, so we're able to archive the data. But when you use the Windshuttle archiving tool, that data gets removed. After it's archived, it is removed from the Windshuttle workflow database. So as of today, the Process BI platform that you have is pointing directly to your Windshuttle workflow SQL database. And if you would archive your data, that data is gone, and your Process BI dashboards will not reflect that data. So in this version of Process BI coming out in June here, we will support archiving. So the data, even after you archive, using the Windshuttle archiving features to reduce the size of your Windshuttle workflow database and your SharePoint list to gain improved performance, we will still store that archived data off on a separate database to make sure that it is part of the Process BI dashboards, even though that data has been archived. So this does provide a requirement for an additional database to be created within the Process BI area. So any existing SQL server that you're already using for Windshuttle workflow or for the Process BI app, just an additional database would be required to store that archived data before it's deleted. So Process BI will join the archived data set with the current data set and provide you the dashboards. So the dashboards right now are only a rolling 12 months. We do have all of the data for past 12 months if necessary, but some people need to archive within that 12-month period. So if you're a big user and you're doing 5,000 items every 2 or 3 months, you don't want to lose that data from your dashboard. So that's what that additional database is going to do. And then there's a little schedule job that'll grab all of the completed data out of the Windshuttle workflow database and move it into the Process BI database. So you have an entire data set for the Process BI platform. So that's going to be available with the new data model coming on June 12th as well. It will require, again, an additional database to be created within your server, your SQL server. So it's not going to be a big space taker or anything like that, but it is a requirement so we can store that data before Windshuttle deletes it during archiving. Okay, moving on, we wanted to touch base here for product development person from Windshuttle, Kevin Goulet. He's joining us today to talk about what Windshuttle is offering from a dashboard perspective and how Process BI sort of enhances that capability. So I see Kevin has joined. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get the webinar to enable audio. There we go. Okay, Kevin, can you hear me okay?
I can. Lance, can you hear me?
I sure can. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin. If you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself to the folks that may not know you, and then explain a little bit about what Windshuttle's offering with reporting and where it might be going in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your business, first and foremost. My name is Kevin Goulet. I'm the VP of Product Management for the company. I am excited to be on the call today to take a look at what Lance and Mark and the CPS team have put together in terms of actual dashboards with very tight integration into our foundation product. One of the things that I think is important, and Mark and Lance and I spoke about this, is to provide you our vision, our view of where we are going, Windshuttle is going, related to dashboarding, etc. So those of you who are on the newer versions of Foundation, there is an admin dashboard that does ship with the product. And our intent is to continue with that level of dashboard out of the box that we will probably enhance over time, but we don't expect to get to the level of detail that in the dashboard itself that Lance is sharing with the offering here at Power BI. What we do intend to do, however, is to allow our data to be presented in a way that is consumable. And our data, meaning the foundation process data, etc., is consumable by dashboards that you customers may use, other customers may use, etc. I've done a lot of conversations with customers over the past couple of weeks at WUGs, at Lunch and Learns, etc. And what I found is there are a number of unique platforms out there. This, of course, being one that Mark and the team have built up specific for Foundation. But there are some commercial off-the-shelf dashboarding tools that are out there that customers are utilizing and want to continue to utilize those as opposed to going to a specific purpose-built one from Windshuttle. As a result, that will be our direction going forward. And we are working on when that fits into the roadmap, when we can bring that to the market, and what dashboarding platforms we will be able to support. Clearly, we will be working with Mark and his team on the CPS dashboard here, but there are others commercial off the shelf that we intend to interoperate with as well. So that is the direction. Clearly, I owe you and the entire customer base data around the timing of that, when that will be built out, what that roadmap looks like. Perhaps it's a sequential order of data presentation, storage, history versus real time, et cetera, that we intend to build out completely. With that, any questions, or Lance, anything else you'd like me to add as part of the conversation?
No, I think that was a good just summary of where Windshuttle's going. With that, I'll look here to see if anyone has any questions. I don't see any hands raised or any questions. We'll just take 1 minute here in case people do want to provide a question. Okay, I didn't see any hands go up or any questions come in. So Kevin, thanks so much for joining today and just helping customers understand where Windchill is going with dashboards and presenting the data for consumption by tools like this and other tools as well.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. So moving along to some tips and tricks that we wanted to talk about. All right, so one unique thing here that people may not know about is this concept called a bookmark. So up at the top of your dashboards here, there's this little thing called bookmarks. It's just this little icon, and when you're a process owner and you want to track information for your particular process, the Process BI dashboards gives you all of the information. So when you come in here, you may have a preset way of thinking that you say, okay, I want to drill down on this, I want to have my filter placed on this, and every time you come into the Process BI dashboards, you have to do that every time. So even if I set a filter on this particular graphic here and picking that particular process, if I'm going to launch that process again, or that next time I come into launch Process BI, I have to reselect that type of information. I have to navigate to where I want to go, then I have to refilter on things. What a bookmark does is allows you to save that type of filter. So if I wanted to create a bookmark for auto test, because that's the process I want to filter on, and I'm on the task summary duration sheet, I can save that and go right to that bookmark. So when I come in, it may not have that bookmark pre-saved for that session, but I can set up different ways of looking at my data, and I can save that as a particular bookmark. So, and I can edit the names of the bookmark if I'd like. So if I want to change that to filtered on task durations for auto test processes. And maybe for you, this is a material master process, or it's a customer process, or a capital expenditure request process. Whatever process you may be looking to specifically report on or view the visualizations for, and you're always going in here to do the same thing, you can preset those bookmarks. And that way, the next time you come into the dashboards, you simply go up to the top, select your bookmark, and it'll take you right to the sheet that you want to look at, filtered on the way you want it to be filtered. That doesn't mean you can't do other things with it. You could always come in and remove the filter, and then you're back to normal. You're seeing all the process data as well. But the bookmark is a handy way to come into your dashboards and look specifically at the data that's most interesting to you, filtered the way you want to see it, whether it's drilled down already or something like that. But it does not preclude you from removing those filters within that session and doing something else. So that's one good tip to review. Another one is called called Lassoing Data. So you get trying to rein in your data and use the lasso feature. So if you're familiar with the Process BI tool, you're able to select multiple items as your filters. Okay, so if I only want to look at the items that have been that are open from this year, I can select multiple of them and hit the green check mark, and then it'll redesign the graphics based upon those selections. But if I have a big set of data and I don't necessarily want to go through here and click every one, if I just left click on it and I have this little lasso up here, it says turn on lasso, I can now draw a circle around the data that I want to look at, and it'll pre-filter that for me. So I didn't have to select a whole bunch of information. I just drew a lasso around what was meaningful to me, and then it pre-filtered for that. And again, I could clear that as well. So you could always select one, individually, whatever you want to look at, or again, to use the lasso, you simply left click on it. You get a few options. One is the lasso, and you could draw a line around the items that you want to view more information on. Okay, so along those lines, so I have some filtered information here, and I want to look at the other dashboards based upon what I filtered here. So after you provide a filter and you accept the filter by hitting the green checkbox, you'll see that it is filtered up here at the top level. So as you move from one sheet to the next, that filter still applies. So you don't have to go from one screen and then refilter to the other ones and so on. But just want to make sure that you remember that if you have filtered on one sheet, that filter does carry over to the next one. So sometimes like, well, why is there only so many processes? I know there's way more than that. And then I realize that I'm pre-filtered. So it can be a blessing and a curse, because you can pick something from one sheet and it filters that data all throughout, but then sometimes you can forget that you filtered. So I just want to let you know that you can filter on an item here and have that carry through to all of the other sheets that you're looking to do. So if you're trying to get some information where you can't easily filter on something on that particular screen, but it's available somewhere else. So for example, if I wanted to look at processes that maybe Lance was involved in, let's see if I can find Lance's name here. We'll focus on this WS Dev user because they have a few items. So I'm going to select that one. And now everything I'm looking at is based upon processes that user has been a part of. Okay, so that's helpful. So not every graphic has the ability to drill down by a user. So if you're able to find one that does, you can then carry over that filter to another page. So this also comes in handy on this one when you're looking for a specific process. If you're looking for items from a specific process, maybe just a couple of forms. So we'll do auto test here, and we'll just select all of them. And we'll get rid of that one. So now we have certain processes that have been filtered. I guess I selected all except that particular one. So we'll go ahead and do that again. We'll search for auto, and we'll just select these few here. Okay, so now my processes, all of my graphics are filtered on those 6 processes that I selected. So as I move from sheet to sheet, you can see the information for those particular processes. Okay, so that's a little tip just to understand that you can pick something from a different sheet that you may not have available somewhere else, but then use it as a filter to get more granular data on other graphics. All right, so those are the couple tips I wanted to show, talk about how to use bookmarks, lassoing the data, if you want to do multi-select a little bit easier than individual picking of the chart items to do filtering, and then also understanding that your filters apply from one sheet to the next, and that you can go to other sheets to provide filters for sheets that don't have that particular ability. All right, so that's where we're going to end with that. I do want to talk about the availability of the updated Process BI application. So like I said, on June 12th, this application will be available to support the additional visualizations that we talked about, the number of touches, the number of processes being fully automated, as well as a couple of bugs that were fixed, and being able to support process data that has been archived from Windshuttle. So that's going to be June 12th. We will be reaching out to all of our customers individually with information on how to get that. Right now, it's just going to be working directly with us to help you do the install of that new application. They will be version numbered to make sure that we understand what version you have and compatibility. So this does run on ClickSense as a background. So there may be future enhancements that are only available if you are on a certain level of ClickSense, and we will help you upgrade that as well. When you have the Process BI platform, that gives you free access to all the upgrades that you need. You do not have to pay for additional software for any of those upgrades. It's all part of what you already own. But we can work together on getting you updated. For example, coming out in the next version in July, there will be more statistical graphs available. So if you like whisker plots and box plots and outliers and all those types of graphics that show you the outliers, those are going to be available as visualizations starting in July. So we may see some of those visualizations be added to Process BI for more pure statistical analysis on the processes. So again, talking about number of sigma separation of changes, things like that, those visualizations are not available today, but they will be available in a future version of ClickSense, which is what Process BI sits on. So then we can incorporate those types of graphics as well, but it will require you to be on a particular version. So we'll make sure all of that is documented when you go to Process BI version 2, what the backend requirements are, and we'll make sure everyone is set up accordingly. Again, all the software you need is already included with what you're already paying, so there's no additional cost there. One new thing as well is the ability to interact with Sharepoint data. So we're now able to interact with Sharepoint. So for example, if you have a customer request process, I'm just going to, I just made up this list. So as you know, every Windshuttle form and workflow process comes with its own Sharepoint list that stores some of that form data. So here, this is just a basic customer request. I might have the customer name, country, sales org, just some things that I made up here to go through this example. So this is information that you would need to promote. So within your Composer solution, you need to determine what fields from your form you're going to promote to the Sharepoint list. And then those become available for reporting. So if you happen to have items that are not promoted, we could always redeploy your solution with those promoted fields and run a little script to backfill those open items. So for example, if you wanted to see something that is not on here, maybe instead of, in addition to country, you want to see, maybe the region or the state that they're in. So we could always add that as a promoted field within your workflow solution, but then we could go backfill it with all of the open items. We could reach into the form data and then update Sharepoint with that. So when you do a new promoted field, it's only going to get automatically filled in with data for processes that have been launched after that point. So we need to go backfill any old processes or in-flight processes that were launched prior to that new column being promoted. So that's something we've done before. It's just a little script to understand what your site name is in the column that you're trying to update and where the field is within your form, and we can go backfill that. But once you have all of your Sharepoint data set up, we can now do dashboards based upon those items as well. So these are not out-of-the-box graphics, but the capability to do them is. So I don't know if that makes sense, but every process has its own form data that is unique to itself. So if you're doing customer data, you can see here on my customer list, I have country, customer name, sales org, and so on. I can't do the same dashboards that I would do for a customer request that I would do for a material master request, because material masters have, they have material types and they have MRP controllers and plants. So they have much different data within the form. So what you would most likely be doing is creating a little dashboard for each SharePoint list that you wanted to, or each process that you wanted to report on. So in this example, what we're looking at is just a quick and simple, it's not pretty. This took me maybe 15 minutes to whip up, just as an example of what you can do with the SharePoint data. So looking at the number of open processes, there are 8 total that are open. So I'm reporting based upon the status. You can see the status here: in process, credit review, and then I have a number of them that are completed. So out of my 15 total, I have 7 that are completed, leaving 8 open. And now I can see, out of the 8 that are open, what are the statuses of those? Okay, well, 50% are at credit review, 37% are waiting for the data team, and the other 12 are just at a generic in-process state. So now you can get a better idea holistically of where open processes are at, what status they're in, whether they're out for data collection, waiting for the data team, or approval, or whatever it may be. You can get a little bit more granular in that particular process. Some of this information is already in the standard process BI, but just showing you again here with a different view of it, so you don't have to flip back and forth between the 2 applications, the process BI that's looking at the form and workflow data, and then any standalone dashboards that you may have created for your form data. But here we can see how many countries are represented in the data set. So we have we have 3 requests for Canadian customers, 2 requests for French customers. For UK, we have 2, in the US a lot. So this gives you an idea. It's like, where are we getting our new customers from? What regions are really starting to expand? We're able to see, we're getting a lot of traction in the US, for example. Or maybe you had a marketing campaign for Canada and you really want to see Canada requests coming up over time as well. So you would be able to track that, create your own dashboards using the SharePoint data as well. And again, you can pre-filter on any data. So processes where user 1 was a part of, you can select user 1. All the same functionality that we saw in the standard process BI, but you can use that technology here as well for your SharePoint-based individual ones as well. So you could create as many of those as you wanted to. You would create new process BI apps, and then you could share those with any process BI user. You could restrict the access to those to only be for certain people through the work streams. So you would potentially create a new work stream for a customer, add the application to it, and assign specific access to that user. So not everyone. If there's certain things you don't want people to see, you can use security to help manage who sees what applications. All right, I do see one question here, so let's see what that question is. What about items that you added to SharePoint but are not in your form? So Sharon, I'm going to allow you to elaborate here. If it's okay, I'm going to unmute your microphone and we can have a little discussion. So you want to talk about reporting on SharePoint lists that aren't related to your form, like maybe you have other SharePoint lists outside of Windshuttle workflow. Is that what you're asking?
Can you hear me?
I sure can. Yep.
Okay. I was thinking, we have one form that has a finite number of fields in the process, and another team said, gosh, I can use all those fields, but I have a bunch of others that I need to track based on those fields. So we added fields in SharePoint only, because it doesn't go through the process, that people use to add information to. So I was wondering if you have your fields that are promoted, but then you have some add-on fields that do not go through the form, would we be able to work with Process BI on those fields as well?
So if the columns that you're trying to track, the additional columns, are within the same list, are they in a totally different SharePoint list?
They're within the same list.
Okay, then you would be okay to do that with what you have. So just as a refresher, the Process BI platform is authorized for you to use with data pertaining to your Windshuttle forms and workflow only. So while it has the technology to reach out into other databases and SharePoint lists and other data sources, your user license is restricted to only that information that is deemed within the scope of Windshuttle. So if you have a list that is created and managed by Windshuttle form and workflow and it has other columns in there that maybe other people manually manage, that's fine. That list is still within the scope of the Windshuttle form and workflow, so you'd be okay. If you would be expanding beyond that, tracking other things outside of Windshuttle, then we would need to, discuss how your licensing might be affected to accommodate that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are there any other questions in this area? Okay, moving along, that was sort of the last item I wanted to talk about here is the ability to report on Sharepoint data. Again, the functionality to do that is out of the box, but each dashboard is probably going to be specific to each customer and each customer use case. So we don't have any out-of-the-box solutions right now, but we do anticipate having some accelerators available in the future for very common processes like customer create, material master create, because within those segments, we have a lot of customers that have customer processes and vendor processes and material processes or invoice processes. So those common things, we're likely to create what we would call an accelerator, a pre-built graphic for those items that would be a starting point. Because we know customers have things like addresses, so we can promote, state, country, zip code, phone, things like that that are common. And if your particular process doesn't have it, that's okay. We could, then just adjust from that starting point. So we'd say, here's your building block, here's the accelerator. It's not the finished product because we're going to have to tailor it to your environment. But here's, 90% of it being done. Would need to tailor it. Maybe we need to promote some additional fields within your process, or maybe we need to remove some fields that we're looking for from the dashboard itself. But we're likely to have accelerators coming out in the next few months around particular processes. But for those of you that are solution care customers, this type of effort could be done within a solution care ticket. It's like, hey, Lance, can you work with our team to get a dashboard together for this particular process? Maybe it's a time off request system or something, a process, and we want to do some dashboards. These are generally created in a matter of a few hours, so it's not a big effort. So we could either use a solution care ticket if you are a customer for solution care, or we can just do a little short-term project, maybe 5 to 10 hours if you're not, just a separate effort. Now, the more complex you want to go, it could take a little bit more time, but what we see here is just a very generic. This only took me maybe a half hour to whip up. I know it's not the most pretty thing in the world, but just as an example of what you can do with Sharepoint data. So that's how we can work together on helping you do that. You're free to build your own dashboards as well if you're comfortable with doing so. Not a big deal. However you want to work together to enhance your business process reporting. Okay, so one question came in, can you report on 2 solutions and 1 data report? Example would be create and change material solution. We could definitely do that. We could bring in 2 SharePoint lists together. We want to be very careful that the tables are joined or the SharePoint lists are joined appropriately because all the data that comes into a single dashboard is joined together. So it has to be related somehow. So we would want to take a look at the data model to ensure that what we're reporting is based upon the correct data, making sure that when we say there are 8 open processes, we can see that, yep, okay, we manually check there are indeed 8 open processes to validate that the dashboards are reporting the accurate information. So yes, we can bring those together. We would just want to be very careful about how we bring those together and make sure that the data that the metrics are providing represents the real underlying data set. Okay. We'll just give a minute here for any additional questions to come up that we can get answered. So we'll just have 1 minute or 2 here to let those come in. All right, I didn't see anything additional come in at this time, so I do want to thank you for your attention today. Hopefully you're excited about some of the things that we're coming out here with in June regarding the new visualizations, the ability to report on archive data, and the ability to interact with SharePoint information. Oh, we did have one other question here. From a security perspective, if users do not want to see their process details, how would you handle that? So we do have the ability to segregate data. So if you want only certain processes to be reported for certain users, there is a security method that you can filter out data for a user, and we could meet with you to talk about that specifically. So there is a filtering process, or data segregation as it's called, to ensure that only users have access to the data sets that they're able to see. All right, that's all for now. Thanks for your attention again, and look forward to working with you on getting the updates installed in your environment. And if you're new to Process BI and if you have questions about how to get it installed in your environment and maybe doing a demo with anyone else in your team, just let us know and we're happy to do that. So thanks again for your time today. We're just going to wrap that up. Have a great day.